welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers.
And this is the podcast where every week we review a classic TV show from a streaming service.
And that classic TV show could be from pretty much any pro wrestling promotion around the world that has TV and whose TV footage has survived and existed on the internet. We throw many thousands of hours of TV into the randomizer. It spits out a show, and that's what we watch, and then that's what we talk about.
That's right. It'll pick something at random. We watch it. And if you're like, oh, that'd be cool if you guys could watch like big events and pay-per-views. Yeah, we sure did that in season 1. Good news. It's waiting there patiently for you to go back and listen to. So,
yep, just about 35 episodes, I believe, or so of those major pay-per-views and arena events are right there for you.
That's right. And if you still can't get enough of all the good content we've put out in season 1 and now season 2 of this podcast, the Patreon is available for you. If you support the show via Patreon, you get access to a bonus content feed, exclusive shows that are only available. We have hours of back catalog there available for some of the world's most legendary matches, some of the most famous events, and just wacky stuff. So it's a
and
a
we
real
should point
who's
out that it's weekly as well. We have this weekly free feed and the Patreon bonus audio tier that is weekly as well. Every Thursday there's a new episode there, in addition to the new episode that you are getting in your free feed here every Sunday, and living forever as evergreen content right there for you. If you haven't heard it, it's new to you, just as good as it was the day it came out.
That's right, and we offer a tier of support as well where you can be the randomizer, pick a show for us to review, and it's all available there at the patreon.com/wrestling-at-random site.
We should mention about that if, let's say, you subscribe to that tier, where you can choose a show on the Patreon feed, you are allowed to pick anything. It doesn't have to just be a pro wrestling TV show. It could be a major event. Anything from 2010 and prior is fair game if you want to be the randomizer and executive produce an episode of the show via that Patreon supporter tier.
And we fired up the randomizer this week for the free feed, and it pulled a deep cut here. NWA Worldwide Wrestling from July 1st, 1989.
Worldwide, my favorite weekly television show back when I was a kid. Everyone always talks about World Championship Wrestling / WCW Saturday Night, the 5:05 p.m. Central Time show on TBS. And you'll get into Worldwide and what made it different. But to me, the thing I loved about it was always at an actual arena rather than in a studio. So it felt more like what you imagined an actual wrestling show felt like when you were a kid, if you hadn't ever actually been to a show. And then you got the occasional competitive match. It wasn't all squash matches. This show might lead you to believe otherwise, but most of the time you need to get competitive matches. You might get a US tag title match or a TV title match. So definitely a different feel than the weekly studio shows that we've talked about so many times here this season with different territories.
Yeah, NWA Worldwide Wrestling also would be known as WCW Worldwide. It aired from October 8th, 1975 to March 31st, 2001.
And that March 31st, 2001 episode, that is actually the final ever episode of WCW TV. That aired after the episode of WCW Monday Nitro that ended with Shane McMahon buying WCW, and that simulcast with Monday Night Raw. They had already recorded that episode. It aired, I believe it was the weekend afterward, and they actually at the time filmed 2 different endings for that show. One that basically said, we'll be back, WCW will be restarting, and then another that was more like, we'll see you later somewhere down the line that isn't WCW, and obviously, which one they ended up choosing to use for that.
That's right. It was the last television show that WCW, the company, would air. But Jim Crockett Promotions, back in 1978 when the show started, so the show started in 1975. In 1978, to avoid confusion with ABC's Wide World of Sports, That's when Jim Crockett Promotions changed the name of the show to Worldwide Wrestling. The name Worldwide Wrestling was changed to WCW Worldwide in 1992. And at the time of its cancellation, Worldwide was the longest running, uninterrupted, weekly syndicated show of any kind on the air in the United States.
Pro wrestling or otherwise, any TV show.
Any TV show. Unbelievable. What a run for Worldwide. And this show in particular was, very squash heavy, but something that Worldwide would also give you is the occasional angle that would happen here and plenty of recaps on what was going on in important storylines and main event angles as well.
One thing I did want to note, if you want to go back and hear us review, maybe I would say it's definitely the greatest match in WCW/NWA Worldwide history, check out our Patreon feed, as the very first episode we did was a review of the legendary 5-star Ric Flair versus Barry Windham NWA World Championship match from 1987, which aired on Worldwide.
This show opens with a clip from last week's Worldwide. Flair is in a neck brace, and we're told that this week he will make a decision on if he can compete as champion. We get a graphic then for Worldwide Wrestling, and Jim Ross welcomes us to the show.
Yes, a couple things. We see Ric Flair in a neck brace and sunglasses inside at home. So he still is dedicated to being Ric Flair, even though he's in a neck brace. The other thing that I note here, and I'll mention several times throughout the show, this is Jim Ross calling an hour of television by himself. And for my money, that is Jim Ross at his best. I absolutely loved in this late 80s, early 90s, whether it be on Worldwide or at times on the Power Hour, another show for the NWA/WCW, which aired very early mornings, Saturday mornings. Eventually, that was where it settled in time slot-wise. But Jim Ross calling shows by himself, he's just on another level.
Yeah, and Flair is in a neck brace because of the attack from Terry Funk and being pile-driven on a table, and so his neck is in bad shape. The big concern and the talk throughout the entire show, no matter what match was going on, was the health and status of the world's champion Ric Flair. Would he be able to come back from this injury? This was the entire talk of the promotion at this point.
Yes, and of course the angle that you're talking about, where Terry Funk, after Ric Flair defeated Ricky Steamboat in the third of their all-time great series, Terry Funk attacked Ric Flair, pile drove him on the table, left him laying, and that is, of course, where Ric Flair got hurt in storyline and why we're at the point we are here on, July 1st, 1989, this episode of Worldwide.
Yeah, there will be a press conference later with Jim Herd to tell us all about Ric Flair's status. But to the ring,
I would have liked a press conference after this first match to explain what we saw.
So we've got, in this opening match, okay, we're in the ring. You get your 3 jobber guy tag team here. The team is Rock Hard Rick.
That is the man's wrestling name, Rock Hard Rick, here on this show that aired in many markets around the same time as Saturday morning cartoons.
Bucky Siegler is his partner.
Bucky Siegler.
And rounding out the team, Mike Awesome. Yes, that Mike Awesome.
Yes, a jobber, a very young Mike Awesome, pre-ECW, pre-appearing in Japan as the Gladiator. Here he is as just Mike Awesome. Big, not as big as he would go on to be. He is as, I won't say uncharismatic as ever, because he had a weird charisma that did not translate to him giving good promos at all. But they introduce each guy. He gets introduced and he just goes, yeah. And it's that Mike Awesome voice. I immediately just started chuckling. I couldn't believe it that he was here as a jobber in a team in the 6-man tag team match taking on.
Now, wait a second. I do want to say, though, that like it's funny to see a guy like Mike Awesome here look exactly like Mike Awesome of the future.
Yes.
To where there was no mystery. Like, I didn't have to go to Wikipedia. Is this the same Mike Awesome? No, there was no mystery. This mystery was solved immediately by just his face. He's Mike Awesome. It's not like the Scott Hall vignettes we get later, where has a guy transformed more in the same period of time? As much as Mike Awesome has stayed the same, Scott Hall from that 89 period to 96. What a transformation for that guy.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Do not worry. Have no fear. We will get there. The opponents for this trio, again, of Rock Hard Rick, Bucky Siegler, and future world heavyweight champion Mike Awesome. Their opponents are the fabulous Freebirds of Michael Hayes, Jimmy Garvin, and Terry Gordy, which was interesting just in the sense that I had forgotten that there was a relatively brief crossover period where Jimmy Garvin was a part of the Freebirds, and so was Terry Gordy. Terry Gordy, by the way, like Michael Hayes and Jimmy Garvin come out looking as ostentatious as usual, but Terry Gordy is wearing the Freebirds like weird, wacky sunglasses as well, which I was not expecting.
Yeah, they're the world tag team champions at this point. And I believe under Freebird rules, so any two of the three could compete as
and
tag
I believe
team champions.
They beat the Midnight Express, I believe, in a tag team title tournament. It sounds like that's how this happened.
And we talked about it on the Patreon for Clash of the Champions 9, which happens in November of this 1989 year, where Hayes and Garvin would lose the tag team titles to the Steiner brothers shortly before that Clash of the Champions.
I also enjoy here in 1989, this is expected, unlike on that episode of Raw from 2000, right as this match starts, Jimmy Garvin and Bucky Siegler lock up, and Jim Ross starts talking about the other events that the NWA is going to have, including an event just hours away at the Charlotte Coliseum, the brand new Charlotte Coliseum.
My favorite parts here are Gordy manhandling Siegler, throwing him around by the hair, beating him down outside the ring.
Yeah, my notes are very similar. I have Gordy is in, and oh my God, he is just ragdolling and manhandling Bucky. He's doing it. He's just throwing him around the ring. Then he throws him to the floor. He literally runs him around the ring and throws him into this unfolded chair, this chair that's sitting out. Again, the ring announcer, who the hell was this ring announcer, by the way?
This was not the dulcet tones of Gary Michael Capetta here. I don't know who this was.
It was not Gary Michael Capetta. It wasn't even cult favorite Rhubarb Jones, who would sometimes do an all-time great name, local radio personality in Atlanta. Rhubarb Jones, who did the ring announcing at Center Stage in Atlanta for WCW. This was some guy. I was very disappointed. And considering that it wasn't either of those men, I was kind of hoping that whoever this guy was would have been in that chair when Gordy threw Bucky into and through that chair.
Yeah.
Also,
I think he tried to throw him face first into that chair, but looked to me like he just ended up missing the chair and going face first to the floor. Just brutal.
May have been worse. May have been more painful. One thing I do when I hear Jim Ross talking here, it makes me want to see the match he's telling us is coming soon somewhere in the country. Terry Gordy and Steve Dr. Death Williams.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Future legendary tag team. They would go on to team in Japan very shortly after this, within another year or so, as the Miracle Violence Connection, one of the greatest teams of all time, and then come back to WCW in 1992. So yeah, definitely want to see that. Instead, the next thing we see is Michael Hayes tag in and a very awkward duck under by Bucky Siegler. That is followed up by an even more awkward low crossbody that Jim Ross calls a high crossbody. No. Michael Hayes kicks out, I believe, at less than one. And Gordy is back in.
Yeah, this crossbody was so weak. It was like... sometimes there's force in a crossbody. Sometimes it's just, it's just a smooth interaction there. This was rough sequence into a weak crossbody.
It was a dainty crossbody.
Yes.
Is the way I would describe it. It belonged in that killer Tim Brooks Vic Steamboat match from World Class 87. It was about that level of intensity. Thankfully, we get Terry Gordy tagged back in.
Yeah, Hayes was not amused. So he immediately tagged Gordy back in, and I'm like, oh, this guy's
let Gordy
dead.
deal with this.
Yeah.
Gordy is in, and in comes Mike Awesome. So here in 1989, in the NWA on Worldwide Wrestling, we are about to get Terry Gordy versus Mike Awesome, and it is not what you would expect Terry Gordy versus Mike Awesome to be. Terry Gordy just, again, ragdolls him. He muscles him up for this big delayed vertical suplex, which was a feat.
Yeah, JR was pointing out, like, Awesome's a big guy, and that was
he called him physically
suplex.
Gifted.
Yeah, that was a big suplex. Awesome then tags in Rock Hard Rick. And
yes, and at this point, so Jimmy Garvin had tagged in. Then when Rock Hard Rick gets in, Gordy tags back in. Like, the whole story of this match is Terry Gordy wants to test every single one of these jobbers immediately upon them getting in the ring.
Yes, this was a 3-on-1 match against Gordy, and it was glorious. I loved it.
It was basically, a handicap match where it was Terry Gordy versus Bucky, Hard, and Awesome, and with two managers, that being Michael Hayes and Jimmy Garvin. At this point, Gordy tags in. Hard, as I'm going to call him throughout this, tries to reverse the Irish whip, and Gordy just clotheslines him in the back of the head, living up to his opponent's name. It was very hard. Then he hits a short arm clothesline. Then he Irish whips him into the corner and hits that awesome following in clothesline that he would always do, where
he killed him in the corner.
Yeah, as the guy's back is hitting the turnbuckles, at almost that exact moment, Gordy is following in with a lariat, just murdered him. And at this point, we hear Mike Awesome yelling, and I quote, "Come on, Rick, come on." Oh, and he says this over and over and over again. And he's never sounded more like Mike Awesome than he did yelling from the apron here for Hard. I wish he would have called him that instead of Rick. But he's yelling for his opponent. We also, at this point, Jim Ross says something about an A&W cream soda challenge, which I'm very interested in because it's my favorite pop, my favorite soda.
So after this absolute destruction at the hands of Terry Gordy here, just destroying all these jobbers, he tags Garvin in.
Well, before he does it, though, he acts like he's going to go for the DDT. Then Garvin kind of calls for the tag, and he tags in Jimmy Garvin, who, if you're wondering, like, why are we not talking about Jimmy Garvin or Michael Hayes in this match? It's because they basically weren't in it, other than the very beginning and the very end.
And I'm totally fine with that plan. This was the best way this match could have gone. Garvin tagged in. He drops Rock Hard Rick with a DDT for the win. The fabulous Freebirds are victorious, and I need more Terry Gordy destroying jobbers in my life. That's what I learned in that first match.
This was wonderful. We got Terry Gordy destroying three guys, one of whose name was Rock Hard Rick. And then we had the curiosity of Mike Awesome, a young Mike Awesome jobber being destroyed by Terry Gordy. So great way to start the program.
We get a Scott Hall video package like I mentioned earlier. This is...
we ever
this is peak Magnum PI mustache Scott Hall here.
Well, it's basically like if you added 3 inches of height and about 25 pounds to mid-80s Magnum TA. That is clearly what they were trying to make Scott Hall into here. And this video feature, I don't know if in post-production you will be able to add the music for this, but I'm just going to describe what happens in this video. We see Scott Hall win a match. We then immediately see Scott Hall playing beach volleyball. Then a song starts, and the lyrics are, and this is a direct quote, "When the going gets tough, the tough get going. Yeah. Oh, I got something to tell you." This is a song that's playing, and as the song is playing, we see it's interspersed with clips from Scott Hall beating up dudes. Then we see Scott Hall throwing a frisbee on the beach. Then he's beating up more dudes. Then he's laying with two women on the beach for an uncomfortably long period of time while this music played.
Oh yeah, he's playing beach volleyball, paddle tennis on the beach. Yes. Yeah, just awkwardly hanging with two ladies. No, it's great. Cut with the clips of him in the ring. This was awesome. Just a super fun video package and a great song. And this was great. I was excited to see Scott Hall come to NWA here.
And it was for a push that led nowhere. And obviously years later, he would go on to be what he was. But I mean, this is pre-Diamond Stud Scott Hall. This is fresh out of the dregs of 1987 AWA and into Worldwide here. So that ends. We come back from commercial break, and the next thing we see is Snake Brown from out of town.
His opponent, the NWA television champion, Sting.
And Snake Brown from out of town, as Jim Ross continuously calls him, he is the most dime store Cactus Jack you've ever seen.
Yes, absolutely.
And it also looks as though he was living inside of one of those extremely dusty acoustic guitars that you love.
Sting, he comes out. His walk to the ring is longer than this match as he just gets in the ring, punches him, Stinger Splash, Scorpion Deathlock. Sting wins in seconds.
He also wins in seconds while having an awesome black rat tail. If you notice his haircut,
blonde hair with the black rat tail.
Yes, harkening back to his UWF days. He had not gotten rid of that yet here in 1989. A great decision to get rid of that part of his look. Otherwise, he's the classic surfer Sting. And as you said, this match lasts seconds. It would have been fast even by all-star wrestling standards. This was a quick match, as quick as it gets. But that's not the story. What happens next, and if you follow us on social media and you saw the GIF that we posted along with the announcement of the show this week, you'll know where we're going. There is an attack.
That's right. Terry Funk from behind beats down Sting with the branding iron. Sting is bleeding. We get a giant censored bar across the screen.
He first just waffles him across the back of the head with, the long part of the branding iron, the actual stick part of it. Then he throws the ref out, and then he's branding Sting first in the face and in the chest. For a split second, we see Sting starting to bleed, and then there's literally a graphic that says the word censored, and that graphic is over his face. But then we get a replay of him branding Sting's face, of Terry Funk branding Sting's face, and we can see the blood. But just a fantastic post-match angle. Just beat the hell out of Sting, left him laying. Terry Funk was at his wild, chaotic, violent best here.
This was great. When he goes to brand Sting in the chest, and it's basically Sting's own blood and face paint on the branding iron that he's branding him with on the chest. This was awesome. This was a great angle for Terry Funk and the main event push for him continuing, setting up what would be the summer feud with Muta and Sting feuding over the television championship, and Funk and Flair, and how all of that would continue to evolve throughout the summer and into the fall as well.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my all-time favorite feuds or runs in a promotion is the second half. I don't know, maybe from May on, but the second half of 1989 in the NWA, because the first half had the all-time great Flair versus Steamboat feud, but so much of the rest of what was going on in the NWA at that point was pretty forgettable. But things got going quite a bit with Muta and Funk and Gary Hart running roughshod over the NWA.
We come back, we see the end of the commercial for Weekend at Bernie's. Yes. I got excited for that.
We got a Starburst commercial, and then we saw the last couple seconds of Weekend at Bernie's coming to a theater near you.
JR shows us clips of the Samoan SWAT team, the SST, attacking Paul Ellering. Paul Heyman, Paul E. Dangerously, ends up hitting Paul Ellering with his telephone.
His gigantic 1989 cell phone.
This was a weapon.
It may have actually been a more violent, deadly weapon than the branding iron if you're just talking about the mass of the object. Then the Samoans hit Paul Ellering with a pineapple. They cover him in some sort of Samoan rap. Jim Ross is great here, yelling that it's a Samoan funeral. The Road Warriors come to Paul Ellering's aid. The only thing that bothered me about this was I don't want two angles like this right in a row. And I know this happened on it's a recap from a previous show or from a different show, but we go to commercial after this incredible violent beating on Singh, and then we come back from commercial and we're getting another violent beating. It kind of dulls the sharpness, I guess, of both when you have two back-to-back like that.
Right. They continued to talk about Sting more than anything else the rest of the show, telling us he's being tended to in the back. He's going to a local hospital, all these things.
Yeah, they did a great job with that. I just think they could have spaced those two things out a little bit better.
100%. You could have had that after this match, which was, you want to talk about a difference in mass. Let's talk about Mark Smith and his partner Lee Scott.
Oh,
these are the skinniest jobbers I've ever seen.
I could do an entire podcast series on the career of Lee Scott, my all-time favorite jobber. He is about 6'4" and about 12 pounds. He's just the tallest, skinniest guy you've ever seen. And he took a beating like no other jobber just when he was a wrestler, just throughout his career. There, if you look up Lee Scott jobber, Lee Scott squash matches, there are matches of him getting murdered by Sid Vicious, getting destroyed by the Steiners, him having a short-lived team with Cactus Jack and Cactus turning on him and Cactus and Abdullah bloodying him. Lee Scott got beat up so bad as a jobber that like a year after this, Lee Scott would become a referee. Lee Scott was actually at Starrcade 90. Wow. Lee Scott was one of the referees in WCW at that point. So I will always have time for Lee Scott.
Their opponents are the aforementioned SST, the Samoan SWAT team.
With some of the best entrance music in wrestling history.
Yes.
Oh my God, you hear that and it's just, you are terrified of what's coming.
The theme song is from the movie Halloween. It's the Michael Myers theme song, and it is amazing as an entrance song. It is ominous. It is it gets you just really knowing that something terrifying is about to happen. It's a visceral reaction. It's great.
These guys, the Samoan SWAT team, Samu and Fatu, they are, you talk about Mount Rushmore about different things in wrestling. They are on the Mount Rushmore when it comes to squash matches, when it comes to destroying jobbers. They are some of the best of all time. And yeah, that music certainly helps set the mood. And they don't waste any time here getting going.
SST attacks him before the bell. Lee Scott gets double backdropped high into the air.
And almost does not tuck his head. He tucks his head at the last minute. I screamed as he was hurtling through the air and finally tucked his head at the last second.
They throw Scott into his corner so he can tag. That's one of my favorite moves.
Yes.
When go ahead, tag in the other guy so we can beat him up too. And
it's a great dominant, scary tag team move, against jobbers. Like it nothing says these guys are bad dudes more than, yeah, I'm beating you up and I want you to tag in the fresh man because I want to hurt him too.
Super kick on Smith. He comes off the ropes, and Samu doesn't clothesline him. He grabs him by the hair, and Smith spins like a helicopter in the air.
And lands right on his head.
Paulie on the outside screaming, "That's what you get."
It's fantastic.
Smith, he's on the top rope. We get a belly-to-back suplex. Fatu goes up top, hits the big splash for the win. The Samoan SWAT team with a violent, just absolute squash, and it was everything you wanted from an SST squash.
Oh, yeah, no, they were squash match gods, and this absolutely was another page in that book. Just fantastic stuff. There are guys who I could watch do squash matches every week, and Samu and Fatu, the SST, are absolutely at the top of that list. Then we come back from commercial, and I am greeted by something and someone that I had completely forgotten about. It is the segment Joe Pedicino Knows. God, I loved this segment as a kid.
Joe Pedicino knows, and he tells us about Lex Luger, showing clips of Luger hitting Steamboat with a chair, just completing his heel turn, putting him in a torture rack.
It's this like magazine style segment. It's kind of like a control center that you would see, or I think they just called it WWF Magazine, the segment that Gene Okerlund would host in their control center type of deal. So that's the deal. Do you know what his nickname was? This was his wrestling nickname. He called himself the Round Mound of Sound.
Nice.
And he and Gordon Soley used to host a popular segment called Pro Wrestling This Week. And they would actually show segments from all around wrestling, including the AWA, the NWA regional promotions, and even for a time, they would show WWF clips. So that was sort of the forerunner to Joe Pedicino Knows. And then he would go on to become the part owner and booker of a promotion that is near and dear to my heart, and I think yours as well, because we would both come home from school to our respective homes and watch this show on ESPN, Global Wrestling Federation.
Wow. I did not know Joe Pedicino was part of the global front office as well.
Yeah, a huge part of it. Part owner and booker.
Well, I guess that puts him ahead of Sean Mooney on the Event Center power rankings that I had.
Exactly. Maybe, and also ahead of the Ken Doll lookalike era of Eric Bischoff hosting control centers before he went on to take full control of WCW.
I just assumed at that point Todd Pettengill and Eric Bischoff were the same person. So in that same era. Yeah. So let's get back to Joe Pedicino. No, so he's we're seeing the recap of Luger's attack on Steamboat. Steamboat getting put into the torture rack, the backbreaker finisher of Lex Luger. No human being has ever sold a torture rack better than Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. This was phenomenal. We then cut to the official NWA Top 10 rankings for Ric Flair's championship.
Yes, one of my all-time favorite things in wrestling was growing up when the NWA/WCW had this top 10 list.
But Lex Luger says that that's the position he wants, that the number one contender is the man who should be wrestling Ric Flair if he returns, and he wants the number one position. Now, let's take a look at the official NWA Top 10, and you'll see what I mean. Terry Funk is number 10. In the number 9 position, it's Terry Bam Bam Gordy. Number 8, Dr. Death Steve Williams. Number 7 finds Dangerous Dan Spivey. Number 6 is Michael T.S. Hayes. Number 5 is Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert. 4 is the Great Muta. Number 3 is Sting. 2 is Lex Luger. And number 1, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, the number one contender to the World Heavyweight title. That's why he's so upset. We'll be back right after we take this time out.
Jake Montgomery versus Ranger Ross. And I was like, wait, who's the job guy here? And it's Ranger Ross is out here with an American flag. He's actually going to get a shot at Lex Luger next week on Worldwide. So this was a quick Ranger Ross showcase.
Well, the funny thing about this, too, is he's Ranger Ross. So his gimmick is that he's like an Army Ranger, and his opponent, Jake Montgomery, is the one wearing the combat fatigues, wearing the camouflage. That was odd.
Ross with a double leg, punches from the mount. He went for the combat kick, but apparently it was well scouted by Montgomery. Looked more like a botched spot here, but Jim Ross saying that it was well scouted by Montgomery. He sends him into the ropes, repeating it again, and this time hits the combat kick,
which was a super kick.
This was a 0. This was not even a fun squash. Ranger Ross is not good.
It served two purposes. One, to set up Ranger Ross versus Lex Luger for the United States Championship. Hey, I did say sometimes on Worldwide you would get title matches. I didn't say what the quality would be. I don't think Ranger Ross was in the top 10 contenders for the U.S. title. Maybe Joe Pedicino knew and he could tell us. But the other thing of note here is just I have to tell you a bit about the man known as Ranger Ross.
Please do.
One of his last appearances in WCW would be in 1991, January of 91. He defeated El Cubano. Around the same time period, he had started touring All Japan Pro Wrestling and teamed with Abdul the Butcher to take on Giant Baba and Russia Kimura. But then shortly after, he left WCW on bad terms, later filing a discrimination suit against the organization. He went on to work as a private investigator and a part-time probation officer. In February of 1996, however, Ranger Ross was arrested at his home and formally charged with bank robbery as the, quote, motorcycle bandit, unquote. Wow. An unidentified man who made his escape on a Honda motorcycle. Following the robbery of a bank in downtown Ackworth, Ross surrendered to federal agents. Cut to 2004, and Ranger Ross made a triumphant return to professional wrestling, teaming with Lash LaRue and Danny Dollar in a 6-man tag.
Wow, the new Misfits in action, huh? How about that?
Yes. He and Ranger Ross would team again, taking on a team known as the Turbulators.
Of course. Wow. So I feel
he had his final match, by the way, in 2007, taking on his former enemy and trainer, the Nightmare Ted Allen.
I feel like Ranger Ross could have been part of the special forces of WCW. He just missed that window there.
He did just miss. Yeah, he missed teaming with Todd Champion and Firebreaker Chip.
Yeah,
as the Patriots. They could have gone after the short-lived 6-man tag team championship. Opportunity lost.
We get a Steiner Brothers promo. Basically, they're sick of Sullivan cheating. Not a good promo here. This was Scott Steiner trying to find confidence in a promo, and
it took a while, like a decade.
Rough. Just rough.
Yes, and if you listen to our most recent, if you're listening in linear fashion, our most recent Patreon bonus audio podcast, we talk at length about terrible Steiner Brothers 1989 promos.
This is
on
one
that
here.
Clash of the Champions show. This is in that pantheon for sure. So after that, we come back to the ring, and we have a match. It is Mike Rotunda and Kevin Sullivan. Their opponents are John Brewer and Ray Lloyd. It's Glacier, everybody.
Is that true? Is that Ray Lloyd Glacier?
Yes.
Wow.
100% that is Glacier. So we have some surprise appearances by future stars here as jobbers. Yes, Ray Lloyd, the future Glacier, was a WCW jobber, an NWA jobber, I should say, in 1989.
I didn't make the connection because I was too busy looking at John Brewer, who's the champion of jobbers. Just a horrible body, horrible mustache. This is great stuff. I couldn't wait to see John Brewer get destroyed.
Yeah, he is Jeff Craney level.
And you mentioned they're taking out Mike Rotunda and Kevin Sullivan, but they look exactly like the Varsity Club.
Yes,
but they are
not
don't called the Varsity Club. Not one time is that mentioned. Sullivan, he starts out with just knees all around. Rotunda in, he hits a drop kick.
A beautiful drop kick, which it's one of those things we always forget about Mike Rotunda, that for as boring as he could be, particularly when he was Erwin R. Shyster in the WWF, he was not a bad athlete. He had a legit background, and he threw a tremendous standing dropkick.
Or in 1990 when he was Captain Mike Rotunda,
of
a boat captain, not of the wrestling team, but of a boat.
Yes, what a great, just one of the great things that Capital Combat 1990, the return of RoboCop, brought us.
It's available in the back catalog, waiting for you to listen to right now. John Brewer gets the tag, and now we're ready for business. Sullivan takes him down and just starts pulling at his mouth and face.
He is ripping his face off of his face is the best way you can describe this.
Rotunda hits an elbow to the face off the top, doesn't want the pin. Double underhook suplex. Sullivan in, and he does a running double foot stomp for the win. We get a slow motion replay of it. It looked pretty brutal. I enjoyed this highly.
I would not want to take the Kevin Sullivan double foot stomp finisher, which was just like running / standing. It wasn't off the top rope, but it honestly looked so much more painful than, let's just say, like a Finn Balor top rope foot stomp. I'm with you. Not want to take that. It looked brutal. The other thing that was noteworthy here is we get more mentions of the loop, and it's a pretty cross-country loop here, as Jim Ross mentions, shows upcoming in Providence, Springfield, Chicago, Memphis, Richmond, and Fort Worth. And he also talks about that coming up in Boston on, I believe he said, July 8th. So 1 week from when this show aired, there would be a Boston street fight with these two men, the Not Varsity Club taking on the Steiner brothers.
We go to the Jim Herd press conference for Ric Flair.
Before we do that, we go to a video feature for the VHS tape of Wrestle War 89.
That's right.
And there's a quote where I don't know what the vibe was that they were going for here, but the voiceover guy, and it's that classic NWA WCW voiceover guy. If you've heard the shows, you know who we're talking about. And he says, and I quote, "Ric Flair, like General MacArthur before him." Okay.
Bold choice. Yeah.
Yes. Bold is one way of putting it.
At the Jim Herd press conference for Ric Flair and his doctor are there to make an announcement about his future. We get serious Flair.
We get serious, humble Ric Flair. But before that, I just want to mention how well this was done. Jim Herd is there. He introduces Ric Flair. But if you notice, like the camera is further back, and they have it. I'm sure the reason they did that was to try to make it look like, oh, this is definitely a legit press conference, because you can see there's reporters in the front row, and it's just the back of their head. And obviously, they're not real reporters. But so often, pro wrestling, you do press conferences, and you wouldn't actually see anybody there. And so it's like, oh, it's just a fake pro wrestling press conference. So I really thought the presentation of this in this little, it looked like a hotel conference room with a packed room of reporters. It was very well done.
Serious Flair talking about his neck injury. He is wearing the greatest leopard print long necktie I've ever seen.
Yes.
I texted it out to plenty of people. I'm like, check out this tie.
When you see it, you immediately think, this is not a man who's retiring. If he woke up today and thought, I, the greatest wrestler in the world, am going to announce that I am stopping wrestling, you're not going to wear that tie when you make that announcement.
No, and he says, I'm going to continue in the sport of professional wrestling. As world champion, I have to wrestle a top 10 contender, and I want the match with Terry Funk, who we saw come in at number 10 on that list.
Yes, and he says that he says he wants to ask a favor of Jim Herd and the NWA Board of Directors.
That's right. He wants it for the title in Baltimore. This is the Great American Bash here. And then he says, so Jim Herd then takes the podium. He says, we've reprimanded Terry Funk. We fined him. We were going to suspend him. But now that Flair has demanded the match, they will make it happen on July 23rd. This is logical. It makes sense. Why would they reward Terry Funk for this behavior? And it's only they were going to punish him, but their world's champion has demanded this, and they know that he has the right to face someone in the top 10, and Terry Funk has now cracked that top 10. This was all great stuff. Everything made sense. I was super excited for the Great American Bash.
Yeah, it was perfect, and it was even more logical than you're saying, because yes, all those things are true, but Jim Herd also said that Ric Flair's contract has a clause that lets him approve a match against one of the top 10, and therefore we have approved Ric Flair's request. Just fantastic stuff. Just everything made sense. They had a reason for basically anything that you would say, oh, why did they do that? Why would that be allowed? They had a built-in reason that made complete logical sense. So A+ pro wrestling press conference here. We then go back to Joe Pedicino knows, but the tape that this was derived from cuts, and we get back just in time for the end of a promo for the Wrestling Hotline. Good old 1-900-909-9900.
A Jim Cornette promo where he wants to fight Paulie dangerously at the Great American Bash because Paulie cost the Midnight Express their tag titles. He will use Dr. Death to keep Terry Gordy out of the way.
Yes, and this is during that weird period, which again we talk about on that Clash of the Champions 9 Patreon episode that just went up as well. This is during that weird period of time where the Midnight Express were baby faces, which will never not be weird.
No, it's weird.
This is a good Jim Cornette promo. It is not as good as that promo at the end of that Smoky Mountain show, but it was good for what it was. Now it is main event time for what I guess should be the first competitive match of this show. By worldwide standards, though, this is more of a wrestler versus jobber main event than you would normally see on Worldwide. That's
right, but it's not just a regular jobber. It's a jobber who's like the upper echelon, like a middle tier of he's above the jobbers but below serious competitors.
He's the guy who would beat other jobbers but never get a win over anyone who wasn't a jobber.
That's right. We're talking about Ricky Santana and his opponent, the aforementioned, the legend, the amazing 1989's finest, Terry Funk.
In his awesome gear with his red leather poncho, black leather chaps, black hat. And at this point, Jim Ross continues, as he has throughout the show, to update us on Sting. He says that they have stopped the bleeding and he will be taken away from the arena for medical attention.
Funk and Santana, they struggle in a lockup in the corner. Funk muscles him up and over the top and all the way out to the floor.
Yeah, just body slams him pretty much over/through the top rope, but the NWA over the top rope rule not enforced here, as it selectively sometimes is or isn't. They get out on the floor. Funk is elbowing Ricky Santana. He throws him into the guardrail. At this point, I'm still wondering how that was not an over the top rope disqualification. It's also noteworthy that the crowd is going absolutely nuts, chanting, "We want Sting."
Every time, clearly, yes, Funk's in control, and the crowd is all over him, chanting so loud, "We want Sting." Absolutely.
There's one moment in the match too, where as the crowd is clearly audibly chanting, "We want Sting," Jim Ross says the crowd is chanting, "We want Flair," which may be the only misstep from Jim Ross on this show. He was fantastic here, but that was a little weird.
Terry Funk dumps Ricky Santana into the front row like they're at an All Japan show here. And
I was expecting Stan Hansen to come out and grab a chair from the crowd and hit Kawato over the head with it just as this was all going on.
Yes, he's ramming him face first into the guardrail. And then Funk, answering the crowd, he starts screaming, "I want Sting! I want Sting!" Funk then takes the tape off his wrist as Santana's getting into the ring. Funk uses it to choke Ricky Santana with the tape. Funk then throws the tape away, and it's hanging on the ring rope, the middle ring rope, as the referee is asking what he's got. And
what do you got?
Yeah, the fans are screaming and pointing at the rope. It is great stuff from Terry Funk. Great stuff from the people losing their minds for it, and the referee looking like an idiot. This was super fun.
We also had Jim Ross mentioned something, and he did not expound on it at all. So I have no idea what the story was, but he said something about these two men wrestled before, and it was controversial. And that was all he said. So I have no idea. I can't fathom what could be controversial about a Terry Funk Ricky Santana match, but I guess it ended in controversy, and they had to bring it back here for a rematch.
Funk goes outside to threaten fans in the crowd,
which is every bit as good as you could imagine Terry Funk threatening fans at an NWA show in 1989.
Then back to work on Santana, dumping him back outside again. Santana with a comeback. He slams Funk's arm against the guardrail, then the ring post.
Funk is incredible selling here.
Yes.
And then he gets thrown into ring post, gets thrown into the other ring post, and then gets caught in the ring skirt as he's selling, which is just vintage Terry Funk.
Santana chokes Funk, throws him in the ring.
He chokes him with like a shirt or something that was laying under the ring. I was a bit disappointed after seeing Dynamite Kid find a broken beer bottle under the ring 7 years earlier in Japan. I was hoping for more than linen, but that's all Ricky Santana had here.
Yeah, a drop kick and Funk rolls out to the floor again. Santana then runs and dives between the top and middle rope, going for a crossbody all the way out to the floor. But Funk moves, and Santana just crashes hard, completely missing and wiping out on the floor outside.
Yes, it was what I want to see happen so much more often when guys go for suicide dives. Just take one step to the side and watch the man splat on the floor. Terry Funk here just causing a man to miss a move was a great man.
Funk then hits a pile driver on the floor.
Yes, pile driver on the concrete floor. This got in all caps in my notes. It was tremendous. And at this point, I'm thinking this has to be the end of the match.
He rolls him back in, and the crowd again losing their minds with loud "We Want Sting" chants again.
Yes, deafening. So loud. Definitely the loudest crowd reaction on the show. And if you're listening to this podcast in linear fashion, and you watch last week's show that we reviewed, All Star Wrestling, and then you watch this show here, the crowd reaction to Terry Funk doing these things and the crowd chanting "We Want Sting" is so much more than anything that happens on that All-Star Wrestling show. There's two guys playing bird calls across the arena back and forth with each other. Here there's, I don't know, a couple thousand people losing their minds.
So after this pile driver on the floor, he's rolled him back in. Funk goes for the pile driver again. Gets the 3 count. Your winner is Terry Funk, destroying young Ricky Santana. He gets the branding iron again, hits Santana with it as we go to commercial.
Also, what was the deal with this random ring announcer? He was just like making me anxious. The match is over, and he's doing, the closing ring announcing, saying that Terry Funk won the match, but he's pacing all around the outside of the ring. I'm like, what are you doing? Just calm down.
Ugh. We get a taped Lex Luger promo. The best thing of note here is the U.S. title belt. I love this 1989 version of that belt. It's beautiful.
Definitely. By the way, it's introduced by Jim Ross saying that we asked Lex Luger for a statement to the great fans of the NWA, and this is what he sent us.
Yeah, Luger tells him Luger tells Ricky Steamboat to give up the number 1 ranking or fight him. He goes, "I detest your family life, everything you represent.
I detest everything you stand for. Your family life, your cute little kids. It disgusts me." This was not a great promo. In some ways, it was Lex Luger cosplaying Ric Flair, but that line, that sentence, was one of the favorite things I've heard on any promo of any show we've reviewed so far this season.
Your family. Yeah, no, this is
your
great.
Cute little kids. It disgusts me. Just that juxtaposition of your cute little kids. It disgusts me. Yeah. This is a better promo than I thought looking back at it. Maybe just reading what he said rather than the delivery. He says that for the women, I don't want your stupid cards, flowers, or poems.
Yeah, he basically was saying that catering to the fans got him nowhere. He says, catering to the fans got me nowhere, got me nothing. Next week, like we mentioned, Luger defends against Ranger Ross, and Teddy Long will debut the Skyscrapers. We see Flair signing the contract for the Funk Great American Bash match as the show goes off the air. Adam, what was your favorite thing on this show?
Terry Funk. Everything Terry Funk. Him attacking Sting. Him just beating the hell out of Ricky Santana. Him selling when Ricky Santana got a little bit of offense. Him slyly stepping out of the way and letting Ricky Santana crash and burn. Him trying to punch fans. Everything Terry Funk here is great. Honorable mention to Jim Ross. Was great on this show. Just as I said, Jim Ross calling a show by himself. So few people can do that well. Here he did it exceedingly well. So honorable mention to Jim Ross, and also an honorable mention to just people beating up jobbers, whether it be the Samoan SWAT team killing my boy Lee Scott, or Mike Awesome and friends like Rock Hard Rick getting destroyed by Terry Gordy. I enjoyed this show. There was no Ric Flair versus Barry Windham Worldwide type of match, but this was a very enjoyable way to spend an hour watching pro wrestling.
It absolutely was. Honorable mention for me, one of my favorite things besides Terry Funk on this show was Terry Gordy. Terry Gordy just destroying guys. I could watch almost an hour of that straight. I think that's great. And yeah, it was fun to watch. We need more jobber names in modern pro wrestling. We need we need more squashes, and we need more jobber names. That's what I've learned is just fantastic. Guys' real names, not cutting it. Let's bring back the rock hard Ricks of the.
And we also, in squash matches, we need guys who are not impressive. One of the things in modern wrestling now is like everybody, even guys who are de facto jobbers, are still impressive. They hit cool moves and then they get put away. I long for the days of
we need John Brewers. We need more John Brewers in there.
Yeah, exactly. Or Jeff Craney's, guys like that. Lee Scott, guys that have weird bodies, terrible faces, horrible haircuts, have no discernible skill, and lose.
It's fun to see. We got a little bit of everything here. We did get the big angle with Sting, and we you got to love when the crowd's just going wild for Terry Funk, and you see that it's just a different level that the main eventers were operating on here in 1989 compared to most other folks in this promotion at the time. So absolutely a fun show, start to finish. This would have been a great way to spend a Saturday or Sunday morning watching this.
Absolutely.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up. So I want to remind everyone, Adam said you could have seen a GIF from this if you were following us on social media, so make sure you're doing just that at WrestleAtRandom on Twitter. The same for Instagram. WrestlingAtRandom.com is the website where you can find the entire free back catalog. You can get the links to subscribe anywhere podcasts are found, and of course the link to our Patreon, patreon.com/WrestlingAtRandom for hours of additional bonus content. We talked about some of it tonight. You want to hear about
including the Clash of the Champions 9, which is the culmination of this whole Terry Funk story arc in WCW, in the NWA. So yeah, if you want to hear that, and that's just, I won't say that's the way the randomizer worked. Obviously this show was chosen by the randomizer. That show was chosen by Patreon supporter Jeff, who cashed in his Be the Randomizer and chose that show for us to watch.
That's right. So you can see the 5-star I Quit match with Terry Funk and Ric Flair. You can hear us review it. That is available for you right now in the Patreon bonus feed as well. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks for joining us, Adam.
Thank you, Jeremy. I am always happy to go down a second half of 1989 NWA rabbit hole. The only thing I'm disappointed by, apparently, there was a Great Muta spitting mist at Eddie Gilbert segment on this show that was not in the version of this that we watched. So other than that, this was good stuff.
Absolutely. I want to thank everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.